Okay, we are officially live. Let me just start by thanking Jorge Boveda, and hopefully I pronounced that properly, and Mariano Sciaroni. Now, I always want to say your name, Mariano, with an Italian accent. I'm assuming you have I'm assuming you have some Italian background, right?
We all have.
Sort of.
Wait, I don't know
Sort
why.
of.
My wife
Ciar-
is
Sciaroni,
part Italian. So.
the surname Sciaroni is from Switzerland.
Okay.
The Italian part of Switzerland. So yes, I have a background. But
so if I ever,
I don't know.
I can't say it without giving it an Italian accent.
Okay.
But thank you both for attending. So we're gonna
thank you for inviting us.
Thank you, Peter.
A topic that it's a topic that I've grown to just admire, and I've only really been researching it for a year, a short period of time, but it's a topic that's very, just in general, it's a very compelling topic, right? It's very interesting. I don't think I've met anybody who's started researching it that hasn't really kind of fallen into it, right? Like it's just it's a compelling conflict. It's just its timing, the people that were included, the technology that was included. Of course, there's so many different reasons to kind of wade into this area of history, but I just found it very interesting. And just to waylay right into your book, so we'll be talking today about, hold on a second, let me get that in, All for One and One for All, Argentine Naval Operations during the Falklands-Malvinas War. Recently published, right? I believe it was officially published in May, if I'm not mistaken. I think it might.
That's right. That's right. Thanks to Mariano.
Well, let's talk.
Without Mariano, it wouldn't have been published.
Well,
never.
Let's just go ahead and jump on into that. How much were you both involved in this and just kind of getting it off the ground? Why did you write this? Why did you feel like this book was needed?
That's for me. The question for me.
Yeah, let's start there.
The book is based on my master's thesis in strategic studies, which I made at the Naval War College in 2014. That's the base of the work. Of course, I did a lot of corrections before I translated into an English version. The original version was Spanish, of course, but I thought that a British public or American public, I had to change a few things, but to make it more readable. And to lose a bit of the form of an academic work.
Right.
I wanted to be more friendly for any reader, any kind of reader, not necessarily naval officers, any kind of reader. So that was a great job I did. It took me quite time to do it, but I think the result it's okay. I'm quite happy with it.
What was the overall impetus, or what was the overall drive to take what you had done and make it a public record?
The overall drive was that, as far as I know, there is no book which addresses the institutional culture of the Navy, of the Argentine Navy, with particular emphasis in the Falklands War. As far as I know, there is no book. I invite you to search for one, and if you get one, call me, because I don't know any book. And the inspiration for that book was one of my colleagues, which is called Dr. Alistair Finland, Professor Finland, made a book on the Royal Navy based on the culture and strategy. That was for me a very, very interesting book, which I found to be the inspiration. When I found that book, I said it would be very good to have something like this for the Argentine Navy, which we didn't have. So that was the trigger, which the thing that triggered the work.
Let's see. So one thing I liked, I even liked portions of the foreword and the preface. You had mentioned, or it had been mentioned in the preface. Actually, it might have been Carlos Escude. Hopefully, I pronounced that right.
Yes.
He mentioned what he liked about your work as removing mythology from the study of history, and he also had mentioned a sensitivity to successes and failures.
Right.
Did you what did you learn while researching this, or even while rewriting or adjusting? What do you feel? Did you learn of any successes that you were unaware of, and did you learn of any or become aware of any failures that you were unaware of? Did you learn something surprising during
the first thing that struck me was that the Navy was unaware of all the conflict until very later on. That's why I in the chapter 1 I speak of institutional fracture, because the Navy was totally unaware of what was going on. When I mention, I say the Navy, I am the son of a naval officer that at the time was a commander, and he didn't know. He came to know about Malvinas through the papers on the morning. I think it was a Monday. I don't remember. The CEO of the San Luis, Commander Ascueta, now Captain Ascueta, came to know about the conflict through the radio. So, I mean, that's not the way you prepare for a conflict. That's at least not in my book anyway. So these kind of things that seem to be quite obvious. When as I went on in the research and interviewing people, senior people, I came to know that there were only 2 or 3 admirals that knew about it, and in my view, they failed to give an advice, a proper advice of what was going to happen.
That was one question I was going to ask. How much you felt like how much power at that point did anyone, even at the highest echelons of the naval culture, how much influence would they even have had, right? Or let's just say they did. Let's say they did argue against certain things or certain approaches. How effective do you feel like it would have been, or even could have been?
In which way?
Like, would it have fallen on deaf ears, or would it, would it have helped? Would it have?
You mean why the Navy responded as it did? If the Navy was at that time, in '82, the Navy was a very, like all the armed forces, was a very vertical institution. Nobody was going to, you received an order. I remember one of a senior interviewing a senior officer of the Naval War College, which was later the CEO of one of the ships that went in the Gulf to the Gulf War, and he told me at the time, he said that there was more fear of the superiors than of the enemy.
Okay.
I think that's very graphic. So if an admiral told you that you had to polish your shoes, you polish your shoes, and that's it. Okay. Right. That's why I think that the culture had very much to do in the response of the Navy. If that was your question.
All right. Yes, you did answer it. But how much conversation, operational conversation, was embedded in the naval culture? I guess did or would the naval culture have highlighted that high, like had the junta had they basically taken over to the point where just chiefs of staff within the Navy they might have been able to argue amongst themselves, but as you said, there was such a fear potentially. I mean, what was there a good portion of the naval culture that accentuated communicating even in that manner? Like how much operational conversations would even have occurred? I know that throughout the book.
I think that in the tactical level, the naval culture is where it paid out, because, for example, the subculture of the naval aviators, you can see that they only had 100 hours flying the Super Etendard, but they were able, in connection with the surface forces. Remember that we had 2 Type 42 frigates. They acted together to be able to hit Sheffield a few months later. So I think that was a cultural success for the Navy, because they knew, even though they had new weapons like Exocet, the AM-39, which was brand new, they were able to see that was the big punch they were going to give. And as it did, we only had five missiles and 4 hit. So I think that speaks a lot of the institutional culture of the Navy.
It seemed like, and this is also prevalent in Mariano's book.
I don't know, Mariano, how he sees it.
Well, what I was going to try to highlight was it seemed like technical engineering was not only an acceptable subculture, but was it promoted? It seems like it was promoted very well, and it seems like it was promoted within anti-submarine operations as well as other subcultures, right? So you already mentioned aviation, but it just seemed. Do you feel like it was more of a natural inclination to engineering and tinkering, just in the Argentine culture itself, or just is that just something more kind of embedded in? Is it more of a naval cultural phenomenon that technology and engineering and making do with what you had was promoted, or was it even an Argentine cultural? Is it something kind of more in the psyche of
I think the Navy had an advantage in regard to the Army and the Air Force, which had a latest equipment like Exocet, which the other two didn't have. And they had just been, I think, a month in France. Captain Perez, which was an arms engineer, he was, and this said by the British, not by me. I once read in a British book, they said maybe Argentina was a third world country, but their engineers were from the first. And there's no doubt about that, because this guy, with only 15 days, was able to match the Exocet to the Super Etendard avionics.
So where do you feel like that came from? That I've noticed that in your book, but I also noticed it in Mariano's book that there's a really substantial technological subculture within all of the branches.
Because we had very capable guys.
Right.
We had a very capable officer corps.
Right.
I don't know what's Mariano's opinion.
I have an opinion about that. I think that the junior officers and techniques within the Navy are very capable, very professional, very minded in the success of their particular mission. The anti-submarine people, the submarine people. These guys are top loads, really, but I don't have the same opinion from a full captain to the top. I think that people are very political. Have in mind that in that time, Argentina is in the middle of a dirty war, a war against terrorism, and the same people who is an admiral maybe has a political position. So from captain to the top, I don't have a very high opinion during the time of the war. The junior officers are very professional minded, but the other people is more political than military. So yes, you have the success, in my opinion, of the results of certain success of the war. Those results are the success of the junior officers, not the success of the people in the top. For example, the superintendent and the exocet missiles are a little part of the naval aviation. The anti-submarine warfare is just a small part. So I have an opinion. I'm going to differentiate the top brass from the junior people there. I have the very best opinion from the junior ones, the people in top or people in charge.
So do you feel?
I don't know.
Do both of you feel though that the naval? I mean, you still had officers that were coming from the Naval War College. Do you feel like there was still a camaraderie that came from the naval culture, or do you feel that there is a pretty significant line of demarcation between junior and higher officers?
The senior officers and the junior officers all come from the same mold. They all went to the Naval Academy. They all went to the Naval War College. The doctrine they had and the way of thinking, it was the same. I agree with Mariano. All obviously the guys that were flying the superintendents and the trackers and we're speaking of first lieutenants, lieutenant commander. The COs were lieutenant commanders. My father was a commander, was an engineer like Perez. So he wasn't in the top brass. My father, he was a commander. The escorts of the Belgrano were my father's classmates, and they all were decorated, and they all were promoted to the next rank. Unlike Captain Bonzo from the Belgrano, Captain Bonzo wasn't promoted. And in the case of the submarines, I think I am the only life historian, the only historian alive which interviewed the three commanders, which were Salinas, which was a classmate of my father, Ascueta, and Bicain. Bicain of the Santa Fe, Ascueta was in the San Luis. They all were commanders. In the case of Salinas, he wasn't the original commander. He was the aide-de-camp to Galtieri, and the original commander had a medical problem. He had to disembark, and he was replaced by Salinas, which had been commander 2 years earlier in '79. That's why my book is illustrated with a lot of you can see Salinas there is a picture with President Galtieri. The one the officer which is beside him is Salinas. In the book, I have it here. Page, I'll tell you exactly the page. Here, page 16. The guy you see at the left of Galtieri is Commander Salinas, who took command of the Salta, which was, in theory, the best sub we had, because San Luis had one of the engines out of order. The Salta was with all the engines, but they had a problem with the noise problem. They thought, the Navy thought that the signature of the ship would be too big and would be rapidly detected by the enemy. So it was never dispatched to the theater of operations. In the case of the Salta, I made an article of the Salta, which was published in the UK, which called in Warship World, in the journal Warship World, which is called Ara Salta's Secret. That was based on several interviews I made to Captain Salinas, Commander Salinas at the time. with his personal papers, and he even integrated a commission to, when it was known that the torpedoes were not functioning well, the Navy rapidly made a commission to try to find out what was the problem, why they were cutting the cable, the hilo guiado. The problem basically was that the old torpedoes cut the guide cable was when the torpedo left the tube, this wire which serves to direct the torpedo for some reason got cut, and that happened in all the shots that were tried at the time, and that's why Ajueta could not sink any British ships.
Was that in part due to were they training with the wire G torpedoes, or were they training with dummy or decoys? Or
no, they were training with not live warheads.
Right.
That was a serious problem that I never understood how they did tests, but never with actual warheads. That started with the war. With the war.
So basically, the Argentinian Navy, along with another force, is a horseman Navy. So nobody wants to risk to lose a torpedo before the war. So maybe, well, the same happened with other weapon systems. So the Navy never tested fully the SST-4 German torpedoes.
They never tested the Sea Dart. Also, the Sea Dart, no. They never tested it, except when they were in England. Yeah,
so they made it just a few launches in short distance launches, and even that, most of the pre-war firing launches failed. No, never. So well, the submariners, so the people who is going to go to war with that torpedoes, ask to the superiority, to the admirals, hey, I have a problem with the torpedoes. But the admirals are very into the political war in Argentina. So that's because I'm tracing a line between the people in top and the people under it.
So did the surface forces, just in a similar vein of thought, the surface captains, were they even able to practice firing the MM-38, the surface-based? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And I remember there was one point in your book, Jorge, that I liked. You had pointed out there was one ship, and I can't remember if it was the Santissima. There was one ship that didn't get its exocets installed. Or I can't remember.
Yeah, Santissima Trinidad never had exocet, only Hercules. Because when the ship arrived to the fleet, the admirals thought that it had very little anti-ship capability. So it was the only Type 42 in the world that had exocet.
Right.
The British Type 42s didn't have exocet.
Right. And I'm very glad you brought that up. I know it's a very tiny point, but I don't think anybody has. I have never read another author mention that, and I thought that was. I don't know. I was particularly
because they don't know it. If you see if you see the pictures, you can see the exocets in the Hercules.
In the picture.
I went to England because of that. My father was sent to England because of Hercules, when it was to make all the courses in regard to the electronic equipment. And that's how I finished my primary school in England, and I made a year and a half in high school in England. Thanks to that ship, which is in the cover.
Does that mean you also smoke a pipe now too?
No, I don't smoke. Okay. I don't smoke anything, but my father did. My father did at the time in England. When he came back, he stopped smoking.
Okay.
In England, he smoked. He was very happy when we are speaking in 1972. Okay, 10 years before the war.
You had mentioned this before, and I don't know why I made a note of it myself. But what was the previous book that you had worked on? I know you mentioned it was in Spanish, but what was
it's called. It's about the Santa Fe, the submarine
okay.
Santa Fe, which was captured in Grytviken,
Yep.
in South Georgia.
Yep.
It took me about 10 years of research because at the beginning I didn't have any access to the classified court of inquiry, which I did at the end of the book. I was authorized to see it.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, I mean, did anything in recent years open up from a security perspective that allowed you, or was that potentially also an influence in wanting to complete the book out? I mean, was there anything opened up from a resource or a source perspective from
a few years ago, the democratic government, I think it was during the Christina Kirchner's term, I think there was a decree that declassified all the Falklands information. At the time that I was doing the research, it was top secret. You couldn't have any unless you had the authority of the Navy, which I had. But nowadays it has been declassified. But you have to ask permission to each branch, the Navy or the Army or the Air Force. They should give you the permission to have access to the Falklands information.
It's very difficult to research to the work in Argentina. In the National Archives in the UK, you could ask for a file. They're going to send you for the file via email, or you could hire a researcher. In here, you could go to the archives previously with a point. You can go. You have gloves and just a pen, nothing more than. You can photograph the documents or the maps or the photos. So, and you have a very limited time to do that. So if you want to research in the UK, it's very easy. Here is all complicated. So it's really a pain to get access to a document.
And provided you know where the information is, which is not always the case.
Yeah, so really it's a pain to go to the archives to copy by hand with a pen. With gloves, an archive, it's very difficult. I'm very frustrated by the way the Argentinian government handles that. It's very, very. If I research in the UK, I have all the facilities. Here in Argentina is a no-go. So well, but you can do the research, but it's not easy. Really, it's the bottom line.
It's something very artisanal, with a very, very slowly. Yes. Maybe you have a contact, then you can that will allow you to see certain things. It depends very much on the background of the researcher. I think in my case, I was fortunate enough because I am the son of a naval officer, so that made me to pass certain barriers that at the time I could have if I had been Mariano, for example, which is he's not now. He's very well known in the Navy because he by his merit, of course, he's very good. And I'm proud that he likes to write about these things because I felt at the time when I was younger, I felt like Mariano said, like you're Sancho Panza fighting the windmills,
yes. This is. No, so it was frustrating to be there.
Frustrating and very, very tiring effort. It's a very tiring effort. You have to contact lots of people to maybe reach a little of information.
Exactly.
So within the Navy and within the Naval War College, how is this topic overall spoken of now? Have you seen have you seen a significant shift in the last decade as far as a that's a harsh word, a willingness to discuss it more openly?
No, yes. I can tell you that it's so open at the time present, the Malvinas War, that every year in the Naval War College there is a seminar especially dedicated to the Malvinas War, which did not happen when I started researching for my book in Santa Fe. I had to go, to take coffee with the commander, speak very, very slowly, very. So it was a secret meeting, more or less.
Do you feel like it's just a lessening of the sensitivity of it, or the how do we? Most naval war colleges want to learn from their successes and their mistakes, right?
Yes.
Is there just more of a? Is it just more of a generational aspect of it?
No, I think it was a shift in at the beginning of I mean from 83 to, let's say, 89, 90. It was, we had lost the war. We were the bad guys. You lost, that's it. Later on, I think that the country reassessed the position of Argentina in regard to the Malvinas, and from that point on, nowadays, if you meet an admiral, and if he has been in the war, it says veteran in the uniform, where he has the name, says VGM, Veterano de Guerra de Malvinas. So that instantly, if you meet an officer, you know if he has been in the war or if he hasn't been in the war, which that didn't happen.
That changed. Wow.
10 years from now. See?
Right.
Now everybody wants to.
Is it a regained pride?
Regained pride. That you could call it that. A regained pride. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But that shifted. It wasn't always like that. I think from the first 5 or 6 years after the war, it was, it was a shame to have been in the war.
And was that shame more from, in some ways, supporting the previous government versus? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting into a sensitive area.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yes, the first democratic from Alfonsín. Alfonsín was the first president after the military regime, and he made he made a trial for all the people who went to the war. For the junta, the military junta.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was something very difficult to do at 1 year after the war. I think it was very brave for him to do that movement when the military was just leaving.
Right. There was still probably
after 2 days. So I think that was very brave. He did it. They were convicted, all of them. But later on, it ended the court didn't, they appealed and the court never ruled. So it was something that, and at that precise moment, the political outlook of the war changed. So now, everybody, when you say you've been in the war, everybody, looks at you and say, "Oh, this guy was fighting for us," like you do in the U.S. U.S.
Right.
has the U.S. You admire your military people.
Of course, we had a similar issue, of course, post Vietnam.
Yes, with Vietnam, maybe you had the same problem.
So I guess I think that's what I was kind of getting at or trying to ask for was there a separation? I've lost my question. Sorry. So let's go back. I'm sorry to change subjects, but so your father had originally been working in Britain.
Yes.
How did that influence you yourself as well, in your career or your choices in life as well? I'm just curious. I was just curious about that.
I'm glad to say that it influenced my very good, because I learned my English, and that for me was a very important issue, because when I went to England, my English was very, very rudimentary, as now, but because I read a lot of in English, but this is like riding in a bicycle. You have to ride every day, otherwise you forget. So fortunately, I read a lot of English. I think I can manage to speak more or less well, but not as good as I would like to, because I would need to speak every day. But I think if you leave me in the US about a month, I would I would reach my original level.
And I don't know why I wrote this question down, but is there any officer exchanges currently, as far as with
yes.
with the United States, even
as far as I can confirm to you, that we have an officer that goes every year, 2 years, to the Naval War College in Newport. At the beginning, they went only a year. After my best friend Admiral Tarapo went, he recommended that the officers that went there stayed for 2 years, and as far as I know, they are staying 2 years from now on.
No, and then it is a little very known fact. When USS Stark was hitting the Gulf, you know that, in 1997. The exchange officer was Captain Colombo, Jorge Colombo, who was the leader of the Superintendent Naval Air Squadron during the war. So a full admiral called him and say, well, we need you. You are the people who know Exocet, and please, you are going to be in the team within the U.S. Navy to try to figure out what happened there. So, do you want to join us in the quest of USS Stark? And Captain Colombo was there, and he was one of the people who signed the final report about the sinking, the attack against USS Stark.
I didn't know that. I have a book on that, published by the Naval Institute Press, which are signed by 2 lawyers. I didn't know that Colombo had intervened in that.
Colombo,
that's a first for me. That's a first.
Yes, Colombo was there, and was.
That's good.
He was lecturing at the time, and he quit that job and start working in that commission. He was like
an advisor. He was an advisor
yes. But because he was the people who know about Exocet in the US, nobody knows about Exocet.
In actual combat, in action combat, he knows because he was in combat.
Yes, of course, and because he was the people in charge of launching Exocet just 5 years.
That speaks very highly of the U.S. admirals.
Yes.
Because they know who to ask. That's good.
We got a good question from the audience here, from Tom Van Zandt, a friend of mine actually. Can either of you speak to the InterService Rivalry and its impact on the strategic planning and conduct of the military?
Yes, sir. I can speak of that. There was, of course, as you know, probably at the time of the war, the Argentine military were working totally independently. The army was did their thing. The Air Force did their thing, and the Navy did their thing. There was no combined doctrine to draw on. And this was more or less The InterService Rivalry, of course, it lasted all the war. I can give you several examples. For at the very first day when the Falklands were captured, the Rear Admiral, the head of the Argentine Naval Aviation, Admiral Garcia Boll, wanted to land on the Malvinas, and the Air Force denied permission for him to land. So they had to speak to the head of the Air Force to get him landed on the Falklands. Did you get that? He wasn't authorized to land, so they had to make a call. Admiral Lombardo had to call the Lamidoso so that he could give the green light for the airplane to land. This is more or less an example. I remember my several interviews with Lombardo. For example, the Air Force wasn't trained to spot British ships. So many times they confirmed ships which were in fishing boats, for example. So we have, a squadron of British destroyers and at this point. So when the Navy sent planes, there, and they said, these are fishing boats. Where are the destroyers? Where are the British destroyers? Well, that happened. These are a few examples. But nevertheless, they did work well. For example, with the superétendards, they had to refuel from the Air Force C-130s. And they did a very professional job. The guys in the Air Force and the guys in the A Force, the pilots of the A Force, and they had to refuel both the Air Force and the naval aviators. I think that was a very good example of where there was a good coordination, tactical coordination in the forces. But the rivalry was from the beginning to the end, in my view. I don't know, Mariano, if
no,
I'm
in the same line. You have three wars, three South Atlantic wars. One by the Army, one by the Air Force, and another one by the Navy. In fact, the Air Force is still claiming that they never lost the war. Yes, I never give up. I never won. Well, it's not that true, but the idea of the Air Force is they never give up, so they win. But the other people, so the others, the Army or the Navy, lost, and that's in the strategic planning. That is more important. You know that logistic was maybe the key of any war. So the Navy has their own logistics, the Air Force their own logistics, because they have planes and jeeps, and the people is located inside an island. But the Army had a problem. They have no ships, no planes. So they need to coordinate with the Navy or Air Force the logistic part. But the Navy say, well, I will fulfill my own part, and then if I have a space, I'm going to fulfill your needs.
I'll bring you on, right?
Yes, but the people there, the most people there was Army people. So the Army has a logistic problem, but the Navy don't, and the Air Force didn't had a problem too. So in any level, you have problems from the strategic, the planning, in the tactical level. No, for example, the anti-air batteries are very well coordinated, but it's a tactical problem. But the people the people who has a flight, sharing a flight, well, in the tactical level, the junior officers again are very able to coordinate, to push to end a common problem. But now it's three wars.
So which branch had command and control over the air search radars at Fort Stanley? Like,
You have to the control is the Air Force people has to control the tactical coordination is part of Air Force, but you have two radars, an NTPS 43, the Air Force, and the NTPS 44 is Army, but all the coordination was made by the Air Force.
And at one point or another, they attempted to refine those radars to also do surface search. Am I remembering that wrong? Or it was primarily for AS or air search capabilities, right? I don't think they had 3D or altitude capabilities, but at some point they started to use those air search radars to determine whether or not the CAP, the combat air patrols that were coming off of Hermes.
I know they used an Army radar for the launch of the Exocet.
Yeah, okay, that was my next question.
They did an army which wasn't obviously meant to search for ships, but they was the only one that they had. So they had noticed that the Harriers came from certain points. So they were managed to that's how we planned the attack on the Atlantic Conveyor. It was also
yes, a Navy captain who was there figure out that of course if a plane ends his run at certain point of appears in the radar,
pops up in the radar at a certain degree, certain position.
Of course, in that position is something to land.
There must be an aircraft carrier from in that direction.
And after 2 weeks of seeing that and have a further analysis here in the mainland, they say, the British carriers are in this area. The Superintendent radar is not a search radar; it's an attack radar.
Would they have been relaying that information to the
mainland,
or would they have radioed Rio Grande, or would they have radioed another facility?
Both.
Okay.
To remember that all the operational planes, jets were at Rio Grande mostly. They were the Air Gunners and they were the Air Force also,
as well as the Skyhawks that they took off of the.
Yes, the Air Force also. Right. The Air Force also. They were concentrated in that base because it was the nearest one to the Falklands.
Sure.
So in that aspect, there wasn't any problem. They managed to make a pattern from where the Harriers came to the island and went and left the island. So they managed to see that there was a pattern of to figure out, as Mariano said, more or less the position of the carrier, and that's how and they were quite accurate, because when they hit Atlantic Conveyor, as I recall from Admiral Woodward's memoirs, he said that the Atlantic Conveyor was at the heart of the battle group. So they were very lucky that we hit the Atlantic Conveyor, which was the third deck, and not one of the.
Yeah, you're one of. I made a note of that you're one of the only authors I've read that classifies that as a third deck.
Because the British said it was a third deck. If you see the memoirs of Admiral Woodward, he says that it was it had tried it was brought to the South Atlantic about 8 Harriers, so it was a third deck. Unfortunately, they had flown off before the ship was hit, but they lost. That's when the British Army lost all the air capability, because all the helicopters were there. The extension, even the runways, which were to be used for the Harriers, was lost on Atlantic Conveyor, with lots of fuel and many other things that were very, very necessary for them to. I think that if the Navy hadn't sunk the Atlantic Conveyor, the surrender would have been 15 days earlier. I don't have any doubt about it.
We have another good question from David Manley. Very, very good wargaming author, by the way. You described the purchase of the Type 42s as a mistake, although they gave the Argentine Navy a capability unrivaled in South America and probably saved a.
Well, yes, it's true. I think it was a mistake in the long term, because the war demonstrated, we were able to sink Sheffield, and the Air Force sunk another ship of the Type 42, and we managed to damage a few more. But as the war demonstrated, after the war, the British practically made a new Type 42 ship, with more different weapon systems, or more sophisticated. It was more than clear that the Type 42 that the Argentine Navy bought, even though it was useful in the war, it was a wrong economy. And that's I'm absolutely convinced about it. Even though if you speak to the naval officers who have sailed in them, they said that they were very good ships. But the British didn't think so, as they have the batch 2 and batch 3,
right,
which are completely new.
And I think they were even giving advice on how to change the design during the conflict. And
because you have to remember that the Type 42 was a very cheap ship. It had one anchor, one galley, one everything. Okay. So remember when the ship was replaced the Type 82, which was originally to be a much más caro,
expensive,
more expensive ship.
See,
and they shifted for the 82, for the 42, because it was very cheap, and that's why the Navy said, "Oh, this ship is good. It had plenty of problems, plenty. I have articles from Argentine officers which were at the time with the Sheffield. The Sheffield was built at the time of the Hercules. They were the two sister ships, and they have plenty of problems. Plenty of problems. The radars did not function. Even if you read, I invite David to read the memoirs of Admiral Woodward, who was the first CEO of the Sheffield, and he remembers what he has to say about the Sheffield. Believe me, it's not very good.
No, so, and also remember that most of the radars in the 1909, the air search, long air search radar, the 965,
909,
is a very old technology. It's a technology from the 50s. So it's a new ship with old systems. So was probably not the best option for the Argentina Navy. Argentina Navy was offered with the Type 21 also, later after the war, sold to Pakistan. And well, that's a worse option, like the 42s, I think. So, well, at least an alternative, I don't know, Argentina a few years later opted for the MECO 360 from Germany. That was at the time a very interesting program. So, well, maybe.
What's your opinion of the French corvettes, the A69s?
No, all the people in the Navy was in love with that corvettes. Very simple to maintain.
And the size and
it had a very low profile, in the water. Yeah. It had a very low profile, and it had a big punch because it had 4 Exocet Mar 38. MM38, which are at the time in 82, they were very, very risky. If to conform a surface attack force, I think it would have been a very good punch.
I think they were lacking in anti-air, if I'm not mistaken, right? I think their air search wasn't very good, and
yes, that's true. That's true. So, it had a more anti-ship punch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it was a good left-hand hook for the for the Lombardo for the Lombardo trident.
It was supposed to act in combination with the carrier, not alone. Okay.
Right.
The idea was that the carrier would make a strike on the British carriers, and if they hit, then the A-69s could, finish off the job in a sort of way.
So in France, you know they write it as avisos, so not even a corvette. So the main task for the French Navy is to sanitize the waters ahead of any submarine from the bases to the Atlantic. So it's a very, they lack an NTR punch, but they have a good role there and here, and the people in the Navy love that ships because the weapon systems and because they are a very good condition for the South Atlantic.
Okay, so this is the first of all, this is from my friend Javi. With the full benefit of hindsight, knowing what we know now, what could the Argentinian armed services done to prevail against the UK? Would it have been possible given the circumstances? And maybe let's tie this into the naval culture.
I think definitely not, because the Argentine Navy wasn't in a position to replace the ships that were sunk. If they had made a more aggressive strategy and risk the A-69s and the carrier, and I think we didn't have ships to replace this material. So and I'm sure that if we had sunk one of the two carriers or even the two carriers, let's say that the submarines didn't have any problems and they managed to sink both carriers. I have the Caspar Weinberger's memoirs here, where he says very, very literally that the US had offered the British a few carriers to replace these eventual casualties. Mm-hmm. So I'm in no doubt that in the case that if we had sunk any of the carriers, the US would have entered the conflict, and I know Thatcher wouldn't have liked that, but she would.
I would personally like to see more research on the U.S. involvement and exactly like you just. I remember Mariano, you kind of hinted at certain other things. So hopefully
Mariano is better qualified for that than me.
In fact, I have my thesis one of my theses is about the U.S. and USSR involvement in the war, but I think that kind of book. So I am still modifying my thesis for publication, but this is not very interesting for the public. If you buy a book about a war, you want fights.
It would
shooting.
Be the what if, but
the logistical support of a satellite over there, or
we can imagine many scenarios, but it didn't happen.
So I have. If you want, I could pass to you, Peter. The book in Spanish is easy to translate via Google Translator. You have the story of U.S. Eisenhower, the offer from Weinberger to the UK, of the Iwo Jima offer, or the Stinger missiles or something, or the Soviet support. But it's interesting, but I think it's not book material. So for an article, it could be.
I'll post David's response to that. We love what ifs.
Yes, I will send you the thesis in Spanish. Is full. The book is still. I'm still trying to figure out what could I do with that. But I know I'm still working in a book about the super-retardant and exocets during the war, and I'm researching that part, and I'm still writing. There's a good stories, and I'm not going to be involved in the invincible part if it was sunk impact or not, because this is the sensitive part of the war, The people here or in the UK has a very strong position against or in favor of the attack. So I don't want to be punished. So I'm the last 20 miles of the missile is I'm just going to tell the visions of the history, and the reader could say, well, this is the vision. My choice is this one or that one.
Mariano, do you remember the name of the CO of the Invincible?
Black.
Captain Black. Well, Captain Black had many years after the war. They met in the U.S. with Vice Admiral Rotolo, which was at the time an A4 pilot, which sunk one of the British ships. And he told, it's in a book that has just been published in Argentina by Rotolo. Rotolo mentions a conversation with Captain Black where he says that they were terrified of the A-69s corvettes.
Yes.
This is data for you, Peter, that you asked earlier. He tells specifically of the A-69s. He says that they were terrified because they had very low profile, and they knew that they had the big punch that I said earlier. And this is in a book that has been just published in Argentina about a month ago by Vice Admiral Rotolo, where he mentions that particular conversation. At the time, they were both admirals. Black was in the last year of his command as an admiral. I think he was a 4-star admiral at the time. And he specifically asked for Rotolo, to because he wanted to know what was in the mind of the admiral, Admiral Alara, who was about to launch the airstrike on the Invincible. So he wanted to know as he knew that Rotolo was on board as one of the pilots. He wanted to know what was in the mind of the Argentine admiral. So it was very interesting to know that they were very frightened of the A-69s. Very. I'm just quoting Admiral Black.
Yeah, at some point, I need to convince your Naval War College to let me in on the wall, a fly on the wall when you do a war game of it.
Oh yeah,
I'd be very interested to kind of hear and see that. But yeah, so put in a good word for me. All right, but thank you both very much. We're kind of over time now.
Okay. Yes.
But thank you very much. Absolutely.
Thank you, Peter, for inviting us.
Thank you, Peter.
Very informative conversation, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Oh yes,
yes, of course.
Right. Sorry about my English, but
no, it was very good.
I do my best.
It was very good throughout. It was very good. All right, everybody, we're going to end right now, and everybody have a good day.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Thank